I have decided to change up a little bit what I'm doing. Some of these things are going to be much easier to communicate when I draw them out. Right now, or how I was doing it, even though it was kind of nice just to talk and not have to explain anything, I don't know how well that's going to work for these more complicated issues. So last video I was touching on the structure of the soul and how it has three major parts. And we'll go ahead and draw that out because it's going to be easier to understand if I do it this way. And we're going to have to talk about it today and what I'm ranting about today. So, okay, so we'll say there's three major parts. The physical world is here. And at the bottom. And then we would call this middle realm probably, it's usually just called the middle worlds because it's too varied to put a general label on. But we'll just call it the spiritual world or spirit. And I guess we'll just call this soul. These are... And then I guess there's little light at the top, which we will call divine. And then below we would call this the abyss. Of course, these two things are actually linked. If we really wanted to, we could draw the whole Ouroboros and give it a little snake mouth, as it's usually depicted, or dragon, I guess, with the wings. But without getting into too much detail on that, I'm going to be using this as sort of a way of explaining. So first, let's talk about enlightenment, or at something at awareness at the divine level. So this is what you would call enlightenment. And then mortality would be here. So this is the mortal. In fact, you probably could... This whole region is the mortal. And then this is death. Death. And this is the circular pattern by which the whole universe is designed. And when a soul sort of climbs the ladder into the divine, they have an experience called moksha. Now, I don't know if I'm going to call it moksha. Or if I'm going to just refer to it as a enlightening experience. And then above that is enlightenment. And enlightenment is a state. It is not an experience. Many people have had enlightenment experiences, but very few enter the state of enlightenment, and there are good reasons for that. And I have had an enlightenment experience. I've experienced moksha, and I will go through how that happened and everything. But I find that people have a very disconnected understanding of what these states are. They have complicated them and abstracted them and removed the real knowledge from them. And I'm hopefully going to enlighten you, so to speak. So why are there mortal worlds? Let's talk about mortality. Mortal worlds are shared worlds. So they are places where you can share and engage on a very intimate level with other souls. So, shared world. So it's shared. So what does that mean? It means that if someone punches you, that's a shared experience. It means interaction. And because it is shared, it is innately mortal. Because change occurs. And change is a force of mortality. It is an energy of the abyss, of the void. It is death. Change is death. When someone dies, or let's just take a very simple example. You buy a banana, the banana dies because you don't eat it soon enough. It changes. That is how you know it has died and is no longer fit for eating. Because it is change. Okay. So we can just completely replace death and say chaos instead. And chaos is an active state of change. Now, I have had many, many, many spiritual experiences. I've been pursuing this for a long time now. And I will tell you what I do know, and that is I have dipped myself in the abyss before I've experienced that chaos. And I've also experienced moksha. And I think that the reason there isn't much discourse about this stuff right now is because in the hierarchy of society, so if we do society over here, we have inverted this pyramid, and we have put the mortal world at the top in terms of priority. And these things are like question marks. And this idea here is like very much a question mark. People have no understanding of it or even what it's useful for because they prioritize the physical world. Now, this is what we call a dark age. When the pyramid of priority is inverted in the majority of people, where does the power go? So you can see the mortal world as a place where souls are sharing space. And if the majority of the souls in your particular region are prioritizing the physical world, wisdom sort of goes away. It does not become the dominant force. Because people are making choices, and people have, they have ability to make choices. That is just what it is. Choice is innate to being the soul, and choice is necessary for life to continue because things must change. Okay, stagnation is death. It's very important you understand that chaos is death and stagnation is death, and that sounds like a contradiction. But stagnation is an absence of meaning, and chaos is also an absence of meaning. So if there's no meaning, so meaning is life. It's not that life is meaningful. It is that meaning is life. You see, the inversion even shows up in language. They say life is meaningful. That's an inversion of the idea that meaning is actually life. Meaning is what life is. So you will see this in the linguistic structures of society. You'll see it in the way in which people interact with each other. You'll see it in the culture. So culture is a better way of determining this. So instead of saying society, we could say culture. Okay. All right. So what am I doing this for? What am I trying to explain? What I'm trying to show in this video is not just the structure of reality, the structure of the soul, but also to put together a more complete understanding of what causes suffering, and that is attachment. And you may hear from many different spiritual sort of and mystical groups and religions and philosophies that desire is the root of all evil, or that attachment to desire is the root of all evil. And this is, in my opinion, a very poor translation of something that's much more complicated. Desire by itself is actually directly linked to meaning. So let's put it here. So desire is also the act is life. Not enacted, but motivation. To act. Okay. But the trouble is, when it comes to desire, is when you are a mortal being, and I think I'll have to touch on incarnation, how that works, in order to really explain this. But if you're a mortal being in a mortal body, okay, and you are unaware of your divine spark or your immortal peace, or your soul, so to speak, you are under the compulsion of temporary desires, which will rope you in to doing meaningless things. Okay, oh, you have to survive. Why? Because you have to eat. Okay. So go eat, all right? And now go sleep because you have to survive. Okay, and then reproduce so that there's life in the future, and then die. And this is meaningless, right? In itself, from an objective standpoint, is meaningless. The meaning is not in the existence, okay? The meaning is in the change. When channeled, so the chaos, the death, when channeled into a higher purpose. Okay, so this is transmutation. Okay, so how does a soul mature? This is the maturity of a soul. So in order to really get beyond this, because a lot of people are going to, at this point, they're not going to see the whole picture. So I'm going to try to give you the whole picture. So let's delete the universe for a second just to explain. Okay, so let's say that this is just the void of potential here, this little box. And that inside this box, there is what we'll say is a little divine spark. And there are we'll go right back to the very beginning, beyond this universe, beyond the last universe, beyond every universe, beyond that. There is just the abyss. There's no triangle. There's no hierarchy like you see here. There is just potential. So, and through chaos, at random, potential emerges. Okay, and it emerges through structure. So we begin to build a structure. So it goes from being a sort of a box to something that's more like a, we'll just say a pyramid for the terms of structure, just to give you an idea. And then from there, autonomy emerges. Okay, what is autonomy? Autonomy is you making decisions independent of your environment, right? Okay, so this is consciousness. This complete thing is what we call it, sort of an unutilized consciousness. It has no identity. Through structure, it gains identity. So we'll just put ID for identity. It gains an identity. Okay, and through identity, there comes introspection. So we'll show a little circle going together, like the Ouroboros. And introspection, so we'll say introspection, whatever, you know what I'm saying. Introspection emerges self-transformation. Okay, self-transformation. And self-transformation is a whole wave and unknowable possibility is a work of art which is woven into existence by desire, by the way, not by nature, but by desire. Okay, so what happens then? Through this process, there is an emergence of a universe. And we'll do this for a universe, and you'll find out later why. So I already talked about the soul and the endless tail and the pi math, the irrational numbers in a previous video, as being core to the sort of the nature of reality and the nature of the soul. This sort of irrationality of nature that allows it to create and change and all these things. So a universe, the most fundamental, basic form of a universe would be a sphere, okay, with two little spheres inside of it. And I mean sphere symbolically in the sense that it does not have to be a literal sphere. It's just something that contains irrationality. And the sphere is the best example of this because pi is an irrational number. Consciousness is an irrational force. These things are irrational. There is rationality, but that is in shared worlds. So I should also label it pure with the divine. The divine has a level of irrationality in it. Okay? It is irrational. The world and the abyss, these are rational. They operate by laws. Okay? So then we have to ask the question, okay, then what is purpose? Okay, motivation emerges at the moment that self-introspection and self-transformation emerge. So what is the, we have a universe now. We have a circle with multiple souls inside of it. And so it is a shared world. And so the world emerges as objective and as changeable because there are two souls affecting its matter and establishing its laws through their actions. So then what do we have? Well, there's a level of irrationality inside the universe. In order for it to continue to exist and channel the divine, it must have irrationality in it. So its laws must cooperate with the laws of soul. And through that process, more souls can emerge because self-transformation, as soon as it has introspection, as the world is no longer subjective but objective, the ability to create exists because it is introspective on a macro scale of itself. I know this is really complicated, but you're going to have to sit through it in order to understand my perspective. And keep in mind, this is my perspective. This is not something you have to believe. I really hope not, because then you're in the rational place, in the place of laws, where you have to believe things. I hope you're in the irrational part, where you can believe whatever you fucking want to believe, and go off of personal experience, of course. You don't want to become too irrational, or else you'll become delusional. So through this process, we create a physical world wherein new souls can emerge. Now, when a new soul emerges, don't assume that it is enlightened or that it is of wisdom or that it is divine. No. It is a proto-soul, something that has desire, so it has motivation, potential, and self-transformation. But that does not mean that it is in alignment with the ideal. An ideal is what in this universe with these laws best embodies the divine while not abandoning, and this is very important, not abandoning the game of incarnation in life. the shared world, because you need a shared world for love and for a lot of experiences to exist. You can have unity inside of subjective worlds. If you withdraw into your soul, you can find unity. But you're not going to find love in a shared sense. You can find euphoria, that's for sure. But that does not innately have meaning. It gains meaning at the time when it has a purpose beyond itself. Because in a world where there is, let's use an analogy. If you're playing a single player game by yourself, you're really only competing against the laws of the game or the laws of nature and self. So laws of self and self-improvement. That is limited. That's very limited. And eventually it will lose its meaning when everything has been done. And if you have an infinite amount of time and you're immortal, you will lose all meaning. So meaning is, in order to have meaning, one has to have the chaos, the change, the destruction, the death. And when you have those things, meaning creates, that meaning is the life that is experienced. And desire, emerges because there is purpose beyond oneself. These things are highly abstract. They're very hard to comprehend. And I don't expect you to do it immediately. But we have just created a universe wherein there is meaning. Okay, so here's our little universe. There's meaning. There's souls. There's comparison. There's mortality. There's also the divine. Okay. And when you become enlightened or just awakened in general, you realize that life is a game created by immortals, which is us. Even if you haven't awoken, it is us. If you're conscious, it is us to some degree. And consciousness is complicated because, once again, it's rational, so it doesn't have to be immortal. And it has choice, so it doesn't have to be immortal. But generally speaking, if you have a soul, you have an immortal spark inside you. That does not mean that your identity is immortal. It just means that what you consider you is immortal. Or has the capacity for immortality, I should say. The choice for immortality. Because life is a choice, in my opinion. So once you have a universe, you have this game, okay? And it is a game. And there are some people who take offense to saying life is a game because they feel like you're trivializing it. But what you need to understand is that it is the thing that has meaning, so it is non-trivial. It is a game, but is non-trivial. And there's a lot of things in this that are irrational. They will not make sense. They seem like contradictions. They're like walking contradictions. How can you say that life is both a game and yet meaningful, inconsequential yet the most consequential thing that exists? How can you say these contradictory things? It's because reality is not words. Reality is not logical concepts. Reality is not laws. Reality, the thing that makes reality reality, is irrational. It is beyond. We will never invent a language that describes it properly. The best sentence to describe what it is I do not know, yet I am. Okay. So I want to tell you about some experiences I've had. A few years ago, 4 years ago, and some change, right before COVID hit in January 2020. In fact, we knew about it then. I sort of went on a spiritual quest, so to speak. And I had been on a spiritual quest for almost 10 years at that point, maybe a little bit longer, to really try and understand the truth about reality and all this. And I had my mind blown many, many times. I'm someone who practices out-of-body experiences, sometimes called astral projection, which there is a complicated, vast variety of experience which does not qualify as one thing or another thing. It is simply beyond our comprehension in terms of its complexity. I'll touch on it someday. I'll explain it. I haven't got around to making that video yet. But I was feeling pretty bad in 2020. Everything I tried to do in life had sort of like hobbled along like an injured animal and failed at that point. It really felt like that. You know, I don't want to give everything, but like I tried to, you know, start and run a few businesses and you know, you get kind of trapped in this like barely surviving mode. It's not very good. So I had finally given up. And in 2020, I, you know, moved back into my parents' house, into my bedroom, and decided it was time to recuperate and reset. So this is almost 5 years ago. And I took, because I didn't know what to do, I took 2 weeks where I meditated for probably 4 hours a day. Because I was convinced through my variety of spiritual experiences that the trouble with me and the reason I had trouble in life is because there was something I was either unwilling to accept or had not realized yet or had not integrated. There was something wrong spiritually. And it wasn't that I was, it wasn't that I was not progressing. It was that I was lacking something and I had to go find it. So I meditated for like 4 hours a day for 2 weeks. And I began to enter a different state during this period where I was much more sensitive. My sort of clairvoyance was picking up, and you know, you have these effects where you just kind of know things. You have a knowledge and because you're aware. Your mind is expanding beyond your physical body. And there was one particular day where, and this is something that a lot of people won't understand, but when you do pursue meditation a lot, you will encounter this. And that is that the mind becomes more psychedelic. And this is not with the consumption of psychedelics at all. I have no problem with them. I think they're great tools for some people. I haven't tried them yet. I do intend to someday, but I've never done psychedelics. I want this to preface this. And my imagination became very active that day, and I decided, okay, this is the time to start meditating because I'm in a good space mentally and I will probably have a breakthrough. I did not think that I would definitely have a breakthrough, but I was like, if I'm going to have a breakthrough, I should have it sometime soon. That's how I felt. So I went and I meditated. And there's a common experience with meditation where pressure builds up in the head. And it's misunderstood. And when you're meditating, you will feel pressure build up, especially when you're working with the spine, because the chakras are along the spine. And when you hit a blockage, you will feel a variety of different things. Sometimes it's dead space, sometimes it's pressure, sometimes it's uncomfortable feelings, sometimes it feels like something's being shoved to one side or something like that, but it's a blockage. or a tightness or a deadness or something like this. And when you move through the spine, the energy through the spine, okay, to the top of the head, which is what you're supposed to do in order to repair your spiritual body, you will run into these blockages. Well, I had cleared most of them. The one that was left was in my head. So it would have been the crown chakra. And as pressure built up, it begins to feel painful. And you need to understand that when pressure builds up, when it's spiritual pressure, if you stop the meditation and you immediately refocus to something else, like check your phone or something, the pain will vanish instantly. This is how you know it is spiritual in nature. Because it does not obey the normal laws of pain and experience. If you meditate and you have pressure in your head and it is because there's blood flow, or there's pressure around the eyes because of blood flow, or because you're becoming aware of, say, a muscle tightness or something, that will not instantly vanish. But you can tell when it's spiritual in nature because it will instantly vanish. And I mean instant. It's not like it fades. It's just bam, it's gone. As soon as you stop. So I had decided that a long time ago that I would be willing to see the truth no matter what it cost me. In other words, I was not fearful of death. I was not fearful of pain. I was not fearful of these things. I mean, I was fearful of the experience in the sense, but I was not conceptually upset by the idea of dying. And so when this pressure came and it became intense pain in my crown chakra, I decided something. I said, all right, I'm not fearful of death. I'm not fearful of pain. I'll just continue. I'll push against this blockage. I'll continue to do this. And there was a point where there was intense fear, in the sense that not fear that I was experiencing, but fear in terms of energy. Like you encounter it, it's different. You are not afraid of it, but it is the experience of fear. And the idea was in my head that if I continued, I would die. Okay, if I continued meditating, I was convinced that I would die. But I was in a place mentally where I was okay with that. Because I was like, no, I'm not going to allow the fear to control my experience. So I said, all right, I'll die then. Okay, I didn't say it, but that was the act of it. That was no, I will overcome this. I'm okay with the consequences. I'm at peace with it. And that was the moment that I had a breakthrough. That the entire universe collapsed in on me. Like literally, like the experience of the universe swapped from objective, this is a real world that has laws, to subjective, this is a world that is... I mean, I don't like to use the word illusion because it's not an illusion. But I understand why people use the word illusion. Because it became inconsequential. Like a plaything, like a game, like something you can put away. And I had the experience of, firstly, suddenly being outside of my body and seeing myself from above. So an out-of-body experience, or what people often call a near-death experience, but induced by my meditation practice. And I saw black cords attached to me, and I watched them break, as if the power of the physical world had vanished from my soul. Like I had vanquished it. Its power and influence on me had been vanquished. And they snapped. These black cords snapped. And then I shot upwards, which is a normal experience, and I've had experienced that many times before in out-of-body experiences. And the universe began to collapse in on me. So I zoomed out. The Earth became small. I saw galaxies flying by. They weren't just flying by. I was becoming larger. My mind was expanding. My awareness was expanding. And I was consuming the entire universe. Universes, like galaxies, were collapsing into me. And I was becoming this giant ball of white light. And then everything, the all, just shoop into me. And I could tell you that is what the experience of the I am is. That's why they say I am. Because that is the only way to describe it. You are the all. You swap bodies with the universe. You become it. You become not just the universe, but the all. And you're this ball of white light in complete euphoria. And you have this divine understanding that everything is the way it should be. That good is actually the most powerful thing. That evil doesn't have any power. That the universe is one. That it is euphoric. That the universe looks down on life. It sees all the trouble. It sees all the chaos. It sees all the struggle, the meaning, the deception, the truth, the lies, asteroids crashing into planets and destroying them, stars being formed, the chaos, everything. And it is euphoric. It is divine. It is perfect. And it is perfectly happy with all of it. Because it is alive. And the evidence that we have for life being more powerful than death is that we are alive. That the universe is living. And you understand that completely in this experience. This is moksha. You know without a shadow of doubt that there's nothing beyond this. This is enlightenment. But it is an enlightenment experience. It is not something that you are in a continual state of, which I said I would touch on. So usually when people talk about enlightenment, they're talking about an individual who is in this experience of the all at all times. I was not in the experience of the all at all times. I merely had a experience one time, where I saw it. But you also realize that that's the purpose. It is a game. You are here for a reason. Okay? You're here for a reason. It's not accidental. This entire structure is not meaningless. It has a divine meaning, and it is perfect. And the reason you don't believe it is perfect is because your entire worldview is upside down. You don't understand it. You prioritize things which are fatalistic. And so what are you prioritizing? You're prioritizing an eventual decline to death and mortality. Of course it doesn't feel meaningful. Okay, so when you have your structure right with the soul at the top and you don't fear death and you have this experience, you know that the world is divine and that it is perfect and this is exactly as it should be. Okay. Now to move on from that and to explain the idea of attachment. Attachment is when the majority of your soul has chosen to prioritize things which are mortal and lack the divine because of ego and because of identity and because of keeping things the way they are and because of laziness and an unwillingness to face fears. This is what the Buddhists mean when they say attachment is the root of all evil. It is not that desire is the problem. It is that when attached desires dominate, meaning that desires that are literally bound to the physical world, which will die, are dominant. It is when your worldview is upside down. That is the problem. That is the root of all evil. And I'm not sure how to communicate that properly. Because words are often sabotaged by people who arrogantly believe they know without any experience. And it is perfectly fine to believe that you know something. But when you have a society which believes certain things and then crafts language and interpretation of that language around certain things, you end up losing knowledge because the terms become muddied with wrong ideas. But that is only temporary, because in the same way that things are mortal and die, the rulers, so to speak, of culture will fade because they are mortal. And eventually that which is immortal, which is truth, dominates. It is inevitable. So there are cycles. And this happens because people make choices. So as a collective, if you make bad choices, you have a bad world. That's very basic understanding there. But what I want to set up the concept for, which I have to explain later, is this is the structure of reality as I understand it. I'm not telling you what to believe. You can interpret in any way you want. Okay? Go interpret away. Figure it out yourself. But the thing you have to understand is all these people out there that are placing requirements and expectations on you, okay, and saying that the world it just is the way it is and there's nothing that can change it and you have to be a certain way. These are people who are under the control of an inverted societal understanding of the world that is headed towards death. It is dive bombing towards death and chaos. And that it is the responsibility of people who experience and know better, okay, to simply act on their knowledge in full trust. Okay, why? And you say, well, what gives you the right to just lay down the law? Well, I'll tell you. I'm a soul. I determine the universe, okay? And so do you. It is our choices that determines the universe. So I will do what I want, right? And you should too. As long as those wants are actual true desires that give meaning, that originate from your soul, not from society or from the physical world. But I think I've gone on for long enough, and this is going to need another video, and I'm going to be talking a lot, I think. So I'll see you next time.